Hello, everybody. This is Reverend Mark Gilbert. I am on the board of directors of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, and I am your host and facilitator for today's Lunch and Learn program. I'm excited about all the number of people who are popping into today's session. And it is going to be a good experience listening to an audio of Ernest Holmes here in just a few moments, and just honoring all of the treasures that we find in the archives from time to time and what we're doing to make them available to all of you. I want to acknowledge we've got a number of our board members on here. I saw Reverend Martha Quintana, Reverend Chris Plim, Dr. Marilyn Leo, Jim Van Cleve. If I left anybody out that hopped on, I apologize if I didn't see that. We also have Reverend Kathy Mastriani, who is our executive director for the archives, and I know most of you know her. She's going to be assisting with the tech piece today. But what we're going to do is perhaps start with a prayer, as we do with most of our sessions. Reverend Martha, if you don't mind, I'd invite you to unmute and come in and offer us a brief invocation.
Sure. How good it is to know that the wisdom of the ages is available to each of us, that we are each a wisdom so deep, so profound, so infinite and everlasting that whatever it is that each of us needs to know in the moment is already known to us. And how good it is to know that that wisdom of the ages is available to us through this philosophy, and specifically through our founder, Ernest Holmes. How good that is to know that the blessing of knowing, that inner knowing, that process, that goodness is ours at any moment we want it. And so I bless this time together today. I bless Reverend Mark and his wisdom and the good service that he is doing for the archives. I bless Reverend Kathy and each member of the board for their goodness, and each person that comes here today, knowing that they know and hearing it again for the first time, how good that is. And so knowing that all is well, I call this time together good. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Thank you, Martha. I certainly wanted to highlight Martha because these Lunch and Learns are a brainchild of hers. Last year, we started moving through in the board, recognizing a lot of the resources that we have in the Science of Mind Library and archives that we wanted to bring to everyone. And those include audios. And we have been inventorying many of the audios of Ernest Holmes and other speakers with an eye towards bringing them out. And if you're a follower or you're friends of the archive or the subscriber to our website, you probably know that we've been bringing out a lot of Ernest Holmes audios on the website over the last few months, including some audios by Raymond Charles Barker. And there's going to be more coming out from both of those over the upcoming months. So sign up and become a subscriber, because these audios are available to those who are either subscribing or are a friend of the archive. And more on that later on in the program. But as we were inventorying these, the Reverend Martha came up with the idea, why didn't we start bringing them out via these special Lunch and Learn sessions where you get to hear an entire recording of Ernest Holmes and then have some discussion around the lesson that Ernest offers for us. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Specifically, the topic that we're going to be using is something called your spiritual bank account. Now, that might be familiar to you. You might have heard that topic somewhere along the way if you're a student of Holmes, because Holmes was actually quite fond of taking certain metaphors and concepts and using them over and over in different formats. And specifically, this topic of the idea of a spiritual bank account is one he used in different formats throughout the years. In fact, he did a short radio blurb in the 1940s using this topic. He wrote an article for the 48 Home Study course that was entitled Your Spiritual Bank Account. That, of course, got republished into the Living the Science of Mind. So if you have that book and you go to page 232 in there, you'll find a topic entitled Your Spiritual Bank Account. He had a radio program in the late 40s and early 50s for several years that was entitled This Thing Called Life. And we have many of the recordings of that we're bringing out on the website. And one recording he did from that program was something called How to Draw on Your Spiritual Bank Account. And then I might also add that occasionally his content gets pulled for other things, like the November 2003 took an excerpt from the Living the Science of Mind article and made an article in the magazine called Your Spiritual Bank Account. So you can see those ideas get used frequently. But what you're going to be hearing today is a little bit different. It's a different take on it. It has a lot of the same content of some of this others, but it was a special recording that was made in the mid to late 1950s for a series of 45 records that Ernest Holmes was preparing called the Series 1 records. And I'm going to show you an advertisement that came out This was an ad that was in the Science of Mind back in 1957 for these 45 RPM records, where he indicated in there, if you can see it, that he was going to record it or has recorded 52 lesson talks with affirmations on the practical use of creative thought in everyday living. And the Series 1 records were the 13 that are listed there. And if you look through the list, you will not see your spiritual bank account. It is not in that list. But all of those that you're seeing on the list did actually get released on record. He also recorded a lot of others, and they're in the archives, and they've never been released before. And what you're going to be hearing today is an unreleased audio made for a phonograph record that was going to be part of this series in the 1950s. We have a number of these. I think we have a total of 52 if we take the 13 that got issued and the ones that we have. But we have a good 25 to 30 of them. So we're going to be issuing all of these over time as we get them ready, and they'll be making them available. And there are already a couple of these already out on our website. So I, again, encourage you to be a subscriber. So what we're going to be doing for the next few minutes is listening to this 45 record entitled Your Spiritual Bank Account. And as we go forward into listening to it and we come back, we're going to get into some small groups where I want you to talk about what you got out of the record. And there's a couple of questions I want you to hold in the back of your mind as you're listening to the words of Holmes over the next few minutes. The first one was, what does Holmes actually mean when he talks about a spiritual bank account? And secondly, how can you use this metaphor or this concept in your own life? So think about those two ideas. We're going to listen to Holmes for the next 12, 13 minutes, and then we'll come back and go into some small groups. I'll reiterate those questions when we come back. So Kathleen, let's go ahead and cut to the recording.
Your Spiritual Bank Account by Ernest Holmes. We all know that we have to have money before we can spend it. And how comfortable it makes us feel to have a good fat checking account. An account big enough to draw on in emergencies without impoverishing us when it comes to paying for our ordinary needs. Well, let us talk about another kind of a checking account, which is equally important. And I am calling it your spiritual bank account, because I believe that there are great spiritual forces that we can draw on and deposit in our own minds, which can be used in an emergency in any stress or strain of life. Life has enough of everything and to spare. It contains love and faith and peace of mind and joy. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could build up a spiritual bank account that holds all of these things in reserve, an account which we know would be sufficient to meet any emergency in our lives? For we are always being called on to meet emergencies, times when we need more love and tolerance, and more kindness and understanding, and a deeper faith and a higher hope. These are the real crises in our lives. And at such times, unless we have a vast amount of goods stored up, we not only become impoverished, we sometimes become destitute of hope. And then despair takes the place of hope, and fear takes the place of faith. And this is what we want to avoid. How would it be then if we all should open up a spiritual account with the bank of life itself, and realizing that we are drawing on the infinite, see to it that each day we are depositing enough hope and happiness and faith to more than meet any emergency that can possibly arise. In our ordinary affairs, we know that we have to deposit money if we are going to draw checks on it. We know that the money is in a safe place and that the checks will be honored. But in our ordinary affairs, we have to earn the money. And in a certain sense, this will be true of our spiritual bank account. But the earning of the supply or the substance for our spiritual bank account is a little different. For we earn the ability to draw on the bank of love only through having practiced love. If God is love, and no sane person can doubt this, and if each one of us has, as we must have, immediate access to the love of God, then we earn the ability to draw on the bank of love in such degree as we first have practiced being lovable and kind. We shall earn the ability to draw on this bank through constant meditation and prayer and communion with the infinite, using statements in our meditation similar to the following: God is love, and all the love there is mine now. I shall endeavor to see something lovable in everyone I meet, in every situation I find myself in. And as I do this, I shall accumulate a great storehouse to be deposited in my bank. Then when some experience comes along which seems unkind or unlovable, I shall be able to write a check on my bank of love, which will cover every liability of hate or unkindness. And here is one of the great secrets of nature. The one who has taken time to do this until he feels himself to be in tune with love will find that when some incident arises in his experience that seems hateful or discordant, he can actually draw on a reserve force which he now has. He can actually apply this to the situation when it arises. If you have accumulated a certain amount of love and then meet some situation where discord has entered, just go inside yourself quietly and say, I am bringing love to bear on this situation. When you apply your thought of love directly to discordant situations, they will change. There is nothing in you that is afraid. And if your thought of love applies to that situation, it will heal it. If you have already deposited enough love in your checking account, you will find that you can meet the situation, and your check will be honored by the bank of life, and the situation that confronts you will be healed. First of all, you must have a firm conviction that God is love, and you must have an equally strong faith that when you apply this principle of love to any human problem, the very words you speak in your meditation or treatment or prayer will actually operate as a law in the condition that confronts you, and actually will neutralize or overcome everything that opposes it. And this is not an act of the will. It has nothing to do with holding thoughts. It has nothing to do with concentrating or influencing people. It has to do only with this one thought: God is love. God already has deposited love at the center of every man's being, whether he knows it or not. And this love which I now use is not only the greatest sentiment in the world, it is the supreme power. It is the perfect law. It is an actual fact. It is a reality. And because you have deposited a love which can be seen around everything, and because you have ample love left in your own thought, you will find that the love you use acting as law will overcome the fear and the hate and the sense of insecurity that comes where there is a sense of a lack of love. Perfect love alone can cast out all fear. Love is always greater than fear. Fear is not really an enemy of love. All that fear can do is to cast a shadow across its pathway. But the shadow is dissipated when you look at it with love. You see, you are not dealing with two opposing forces. You are dealing with only one force which is absolute and positive and conclusive. But first you must have made the deposit with the bank of life. Perhaps you have spent much time with yourself straightening out all the little animosities that you may have had and resolving them into the one great love. God never fails, and love never fails, and you will never fail if you use the love that is God. And now let's think of other things that we ought to deposit in the bank of life. Perhaps one of the most important is faith. Faith in God, faith in yourself, faith in what you're doing. A person without faith is insecure. Let's see if we cannot draw upon the great reservoir of all faith, which comes only through implicit surrender. Faith is natural, fear is unnatural. Faith is positive, fear is negative. Faith is affirmative. Fear is a denial of life. And we need a great deal of faith if we're going to meet all the fears and uncertainties that people encounter in living. Now, just a little faith can't do this. Just as you couldn't pay a $1,000 debt with $500, so it'll be impossible to meet a trying circumstance unless you have a sufficient faith to cover all the fear. When Jesus stood before the tomb of Lazarus, he was confronted with the fear of death. He was confronted with the weeping and wailing of the family. And in a certain way, he was confronted with the whole belief in death of the whole world. You will remember that they told him that he dare not roll the stone away from before the tomb of Lazarus. Now, this stone is a symbol of the obstruction that confronts us sometimes when we attempt to use our faith for definite purposes, and how often we look at the stone, how often we think of the tomb with the dead inside, and how seldom do we realize that God made that stone, and what God put there he can remove. Or to put it another way, how seldom we realize that there are no obstructions to the divine law. Jesus lifted up his voice in communion with God. He raised his thought above the fear of the moment. And I don't believe that he could have done this unless he had first spent long time drawing on the bank of life. For on another occasion he said, "This kind comes out but by fasting and prayer, by communion with God." Jesus had spent much time alone with God, until that which to us seems unreal, theoretical, was to him, I think, the only solid reality. God is life. God is power. And this life and this power are available right now. Jesus must have gradually accumulated a storehouse of faith. And when the emergency arose, he was able to stand calm and certain, uncaught by the fears of the weeping and wailing of others. He looked up and not down, and offered what seemed to me in many ways the greatest short prayer of the ages. "Father, I thank thee that thou hearest me, and I know that thou hearest me always." What sublime confidence, what infinite trust, what limitless assurance. And how many of us have enough faith deposited in the bank of life so that when fear confronts us, we can boldly proclaim, "My faith is sufficient, my trust is complete, my assurance is absolute. Father, I thank thee that thou hearest me." And I know what power and possibility is caught in these two simple words. I know. There is no question or doubt. I know that thou hearest me always, not once in a while, not by and by, not yesterday, but here today, now, in the midst of doubt and fear. Therefore say to yourself, knowing that all things are possible to faith, I say to my own mind, you do not have to be afraid. Your faith goes before you and makes your way certain. Your faith prepares the way in joy and peace, and makes it immediate and perfect. Your way is paved by faith and love, and believing that God is in everyone. I meet this God in people, and I am one with everyone I meet. Knowing that this God is peace, I open my mind to the quiet influence and the calm certainty of that peace. And knowing that God is joy, my own heart sings in gladness. Perfect love casts out fear. Perfect faith makes everything whole.
I know what a treat it is for us to be able to listen to these words of Ernest Holmes. What I'd like to do now, and Reverend Kathy is moving forward on creating this, is each of you will be placed in a small group with some other people. First thing I'd like, of course, for you to do would be to introduce yourselves to one another if you don't know each other already, and then share anything that's come up for you while listening to this audio. Specifically, I did say for you to think about what does Holmes mean by a spiritual bank account and how can you apply that in your life. But if you've had other thoughts that come up for you, be sure to share those in the small groups as well. So then we'll come back and then we'll also have to hear a little bit about the archives and then take any questions that you might have. Here we go. Looks like we have everybody back now. Hopefully you enjoyed that recording and that conversation with your small group and got something out of it. What we'd like to do now is if you'd like to share something in the larger group, maybe a big aha, something that you really liked about the recording, anything that came up in the small group that you think would be a benefit for the larger group, hit your button at the bottom that would offer the virtual hand. So we had a question during the recording that came up, and I want to go ahead and answer this one out for everybody. And that's, hey, can we get a copy of the recording or can we get a copy of the transcript? Yes, we have the transcript, and obviously we have the recording, and they both will be coming out on the archives website in the next week or two. So if you're already a subscriber of the archives or are a friend of the archive, then you know that you have access to downloads. Friends and subscribers get 20 downloads a month for free as part of their subscription or membership. You also get access to all the recordings we've been posting up. So I think last count, we have put up about 20 to 2 or so new recordings this year, both Barker and Holmes, and we're continuing to post new recordings every week. This particular one will be coming out in the next week or two. So look for that to follow up on it. In the meantime, if you want to hear it, there will also be the recording of this program, which will be out on our YouTube page for people to listen to. So you can also hear it via that mechanism. So let's open the floor for some comments and questions. And Wanda, I'll go to you first.
Okay, so the question you just answered with what you just told about the recording being available. I didn't get to log in until about 2 seconds before we went into meeting rooms. There were 3 of us and 2 of us had only just logged in. So thank you. And thanks for the answer. And thank everybody. Go ahead.
Oh, well, we just appreciate that you're here. Raymond, how about you?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I had a wonderful conversation with Reverend Shearer. She's practicing and having a service in Mexico. I don't know if she's still there or not. Anyway, I'm retired. I've been a retired minister for several years now, and I do have a remark and a comment to make that's really pressing in my consciousness that I would like to share with you. It'll take about 2 minutes. Would that be okay?
Keep it concise, Raymond, but go for it.
All right. Well, I've been studying science of mind now for about 45 years. I've come to a conclusion that I'm sure many of us have, and that is that science of mind is a window to the spirituality movement in the world. We are a non-toxic, totally inclusive in our perspective, and a very unique position to provide this wonderful world that we live in for a spirituality that is including everyone without restrictions to language, culture, religious bigotry, etc., etc., etc. So I want to address those of you who are the torch holders right now, those of you who have churches, those of you who have centers right now in science of mind, to take that into account, because you are in a unique position to push forward and work through the power of love, because that's what it's all about. The universe is love expressing, and make this an incredible movement that's totally void of ego. You must release your ego to move forward. And that's all I have to say. I just want you to bless you all, bless you who put it in this wonderful conference together. I think this is really, really important. And those of you who work hard to make this happen, God bless you, all of you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. We appreciate your comments. And we would expand that everyone on this call and everybody that we know that finds the science of mind as a useful tool for their own spiritual development, that as we bring it into our hearts and make deposits in our own spiritual bank account with love, that we bring that love back out to the world as well. And so we all have a role to play in creating that world that works for everybody. Any other questions? Any other comments? Anybody? Again, raise your virtual hand if you'd want to add something. Did you get something out of this? Can anybody just show me yes? Thumbs up. Okay. Steve Marlowe. Steve, I see your hand up. Yes.
From Sacramento. The topic was very parallel to those of us who are in recovery, to our toolbox. And what I got out of this is this account that Ernest speaks of is not something I just wear on my belt that is separate from me, but I carry it around with me. And thank you, Reverend Lynn, for your profound comments in small group. But I also had the aha, he was speaking of a checking account. And it's like, it's more like a savings account with compound interest and faith, spiritual IRA, that you take the bounty and abundance of your power, authority, and love. But let's just say you put it aside and it grows. And it is this wonderful fund, abundant mountain of everything that when the going gets tough is right there.
Mhm.
So it's not this balance of checking, put money in, pull out, put money in, write a check. It's beyond that. It's a life investment. And I had never thought of it that way, which is strange for an accountant. But here it is. So I'm really grateful that I tuned in today. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for those comments, Steve. And if you listen to Holmes' recording, he used two examples. One was deposits of love and drawing out love, and deposits of faith and drawing out faith. But there are other aspects of the divine qualities that we can deposit into our bank account as well and draw upon them. Roger and Kathy, you guys are up.
And I hope you can see me.
Yes.
We've got some work going on in our house here right now with a lot of loud fans and dehumidifiers after a little water damage. So we've got the exact right opportunity to practice what Dr. Holmes was talking about, because we're drawing on that account right now, I guess. But I guess the comment I would make is that it was wonderful to have this opportunity. So I want to thank the archives people and Kathy and you, Mark, and everybody for doing this. Anyway, I guess my comment is that what I got out of this more than anything else is that you need to enrich or enlarge this account. And I love the analogy of a bank account. I originally came from the banking business, so I understand that. The thing that enlarges it, it seems to me, is an active spiritual practice. That is so important, I believe, and it's something that we need to constantly work on and encourage and deepen ourselves, because it's what is going to sustain us through times of challenge, difficulty. And I heard that so often in Dr. Holmes' beautiful recording, which I really appreciate. So I just want to encourage all of us, myself first, to keep that spiritual practice going and to keep active in it, because it's going to take us through all these challenges that we face in daily life, which are going to be coming up all the time. Thank you, all of you, for what you've done and for this wonderful opportunity. And I hope that we have more of these opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. And yes, we have these every month. So we'll be having one next month as well. Reverend Karina.
Hi, it's no coincidence. I'm teaching the Practitioner 1 study right now, and this reading was in our homework assignment for our class tomorrow. So it was a good reaffirmation. We want to start our bank account building up, but not just to save for a major crises. It's just like a muscle that we need to constantly use and practice so that we are getting better and building our bank account higher, so that when the big crisis does come, then we have the confidence that when we use it, it's easy to fill back up again. So just reaffirming the practice, and don't put it aside like your best china, saving it for Thanksgiving dinner. You want to use it every day on the small stuff as well as the big stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. I'm teaching Prac 1 as well, and I had made the same connection that you did. So thanks for bringing that out. I do want to take just a minute of your time and share a little bit about the archives resources and how you can get access to this. You heard me say a few minutes ago that this will be out on the website. Where exactly are we talking about that, and how do you actually get it? Let me show you. If you come to the Science of Mind archives, which is at scienceofmindarchives.com, and you come to this particular website, one of the things you'll notice that on the screen is the info about the next Lunch and Learn. So as soon as the posting comes out for the May Lunch and Learn, it'll be right there on the top of the website. You'll also get it in the newsletter. If you're not already signed up, you see this option up here for newsletter sign up. You get on our newsletter and you'll get notified about the new archives events that are going on. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll also see recent lunch and learns and things. We do post the recordings of this out on YouTube. So if you want to view it again or listen to it again, it'll be out on YouTube in the next couple of weeks, and it will be posted there as well as linked to it right here. Scrolling down the screen, you'll see that we have links down here on new products that are coming out, including one of his radio shows, How to Improve Your Personality. This one just went live today. We're also posting new Holmes documents each week. This one came out earlier this week about transcript of his talk, Your Neighbor's Neighbor. And if you are interested in becoming a member of the archives, you can come up here to join us. And when you click on that to the individual screen for just a moment, you get a little chart here which outlines your options, or $10 a month sign up and just get the downloads and stuff. We also encourage you to become a member at the Friends level, and there are extra benefits that are available that are listed here. You can become somebody who is supporting our work and maintaining all of these documents and information for the future. If you come up under here under Shop and Search and you see a link for audio recordings, we have one for Ernest Holmes and one for Raymond Charles Barker. If you go over to the Ernest Holmes, we have so many recordings of his posted and coming that they're in categories by his radio or TV, his phonograph records, his talk lectures, and other audios as well. Click on this option here, and it will take you to a screen where if you are a subscriber or member, you will see these. If you're not, you will see a slightly different logo, and it will tell you those are only available to subscribers or members. But documents that are on the website are available to anybody. You can purchase them on an a la carte basis. These particular recordings are available to all our friends and our subscribers. And if you go to any of them, like the one who came out today, How to Improve Your Personality, you have the option not only to download the file, but also to stream it through a streaming box right there on the screen. So you can see that is the complete recording of his radio show from October 23rd, 1949, but you can see that we had a lot more, including some Barker's material, where it's a lot of his talks at the Lincoln Center in New York, and we're posting more of these as we get them ready. So as we come to our conclusion today, Kathy, I'll turn it back to you to see if there's anything that I didn't mention that maybe you think we need to talk about.
Funny you said that, Reverend Mark, because I was going to raise my hand and have a question for you.
We're too connected these days, I guess.
I think so too. So I just want to share to y'all that we just want to thank Reverend Mark for all his passion and work, his heart for this, because he gave you the personal tour, and that's his work that he's been doing to get the transcriptions and audio recordings up on the website. So we're really, really grateful to you, Reverend Mark. I was just curious, is there any publications or books coming out from the Science of Mind archives?
Kathy's giving me a leading question because we're excited to be announcing that one of the things we discovered is that we had the transcripts of Ernest Holmes' talks at Asilomar in the 1950s. And except for the famous Sermon by the Sea, most of these have never been released. And we are in the midst of compiling and publishing a book, which we are rushing, and it should be available for this year's Asilomar. So if you're coming to Asilomar for the SOAR conference in August, we will hopefully have the book available. If not, we'll have a flyer and how you can pre-order the book. But it's going to contain an introduction that includes info about how Asilomar is important to our movement, how we came to go to Asilomar, what it meant through the years, what it was like for Ernest Holmes when he went there, and how important it was for him. And we have transcripts of all of his talks that we could find. And there are some that are still missing, and it's mentioned in the book which ones we were never able to locate. But we're hoping that by the publication of this book, we'll shake the bushes and find those as well. It's an exciting project. And if you've ever been to Asilomar and have that linkage between Science of Mind and that beautiful setting in California, I know that this book is hopefully building on that and giving you the words of Ernest and what he spoke. So it's an exciting project, and we're looking really forward to it coming out later this year. So thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, and thank you for your work on it. And we are a nonprofit organization that's run by donors and people who love us, our friends who subscribe to the website. And we had a very special donor who is contributing to make this book possible. So stay tuned for that announcement as well. And we're grateful you're here.
And so as we hit the end of the hour, we just thank everybody for being here. We hope this has been a beneficial time for you, and that we look for you to come back next month when we have our next Lunch and Learn that'll be hosted by Reverend Chris Plum. So thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful day.